Hi everyone, hope you guys are all having a great day today. In today's video, I'm going to cover the whole entire market in terms of Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500, including the economic calendar. Now, I do post these videos daily, so double check the latest videos on X and YouTube, so that way you get the most up-to-date information. And before I get into terms and technical analysis, I'm going to go over the economic calendar. We already had the CPI inflation numbers, which was for today for Thursday, July 11th, and it came at 3.3 versus the expected 3.4%. Now for Friday, July 12th, 8:30 a.m. we have producer price index. 8:30 a.m. we have as well as PPI year over year, so inflation numbers, core PPI year over year, and then at 10 a.m. we have consumer sentiment preliminary. So we'll see the market in terms of movement. It is based off MAC lines indicating potentially further downside, specifically for S&P and Nasdaq. For Dow Jones, it's not necessarily pointing to the downside too much. It's more pointing to like consolidation. The only problem is you have inflation numbers coming out tomorrow, so that's going to more dictate the movement overall. So I wouldn't rely on MAC lines right now. And then as well as the tech sector, specifically Tesla and Nvidia, I would say for Tesla mainly, it dropped quite a bit today actually. Let me see right about here, 8.44%. So it's one of the mega cap stocks, and that could drag down the market. We saw a massive drop today. For example, if you look at QQQ, which is an ETF for Nasdaq, quite a big drop. If you actually ended up shorting and playing some option contracts, you could have made quite a bit actually. But that's the thing, it's dragged by mainly the markets in terms of mega caps, and you can't really foretell too much beforehand, if that makes sense. So yeah, to go to the breakdown, first I'm going to go over the SPY, which is ETF for S&P 500, and MAC lines, I'm not going to mention them again just because of the PPI and the nature of tomorrow with inflation numbers. But in terms of support and resistance, for the support level right now, we are hovering off the price point that I mentioned here earlier before, for the most part, which is about $556, $556 give or take, and some change, which is actually where we closed at. And then the thing is too, in terms of the lower supports, we could have support at 555 and some change, which we saw when we dropped down to here, 555 and some change, and went back up. And the way I'm getting that, basically, for the most part, just a quick rough sketch, you could see it's essentially support line consolidation support right about here. So we have 1, 2, somewhat of a third touch point, and then we made a fourth touch point right there. So 555 some change, and then the next point would be with the based off the moving average of 554 and some change. Will we go lower? Yeah, actually we could potentially if Tesla goes crazy for tomorrow, which would be the next level, could be 553. But ultimately, I think it depends on how crazy Tesla gets, to be honest, because if Tesla combined with Nvidia and other tech stocks, like for example Apple, we also dropped down 2.32%, which is pretty massive because, like for example, Apple is a 3.5 almost trillion dollar company, pretty massive. So when they move quite a bit, they tend to move the market for sure. So back to SPY ETF for S&P 500, I think there's a good chance we might get down to this level again, potentially, especially with contracts ending tomorrow. That's at the $550 and some change price point, which coincides with the moving average. I think the moving average would probably get close to it. Actually, yeah, it's 550 and some change as well. The moving average currently right now, so it's showing 550 and 2 cents. So those will be the lower levels. Now to the upside, there is a chance we could go up to the upside. An inflation number, for example, could be good, and I'm expecting it personally to be good. But again, because of the mega cap stocks, they're moving the way they are. And the reason why, for example, Tesla went down today was because the robotaxi news, they were supposed to do presentation and technically be somewhat ready sometime in August. Now, rumors is it's being pushed to October. So due to that, the stock dropped quite significantly, right? Just to show you visually, it's a pretty big drop, right? We went from $270, give or take, all the way down to $235 in after hours. So quite a bit of a drop for sure. And then 241 during the trading time. But again, so for SPY, to the top side, you have resistance at the moving average, which is about $557 and some change. And then the next level, I could see potentially this being resistance, but it's debatable. Actually, I would say probably this with the 2 touch points right about here. So 559 and some change. We already know 560 is going to be obviously some resistance. And then this consolidation phase right about here, 561 and some change. And then the all-time high previously, because we created a new all-time high of 562 and some change. So yeah, so it's going to be interesting for tomorrow for sure. Now for QQQ, which is the ETF for Nasdaq, obviously different levels, but relatively it seems like there's a little bit more of a chance that it won't drop too much. But it's strange because Nasdaq is more for the tech sector. So if it does get hit, it's going to get hit harder, which you could probably tell it somewhat did in a way, because it dropped quite significantly because of the tech sector. So maybe the same case could be. But the first levels of support is where we're pretty much at right now. So we did dip down to 490, which I mentioned, I believe, yesterday. I'm pretty sure. But I think from what I remember I stated was that it's a vague, rough support level, because there's only 2 touch points right about here, the consolidation touch point. So about 490 could act as support, which it did. 490 acted as support, went back up. We closed at 491 and some change. And the question is, if we go lower, which is if 490 could hold us still, but debatable, right, because of tech sectors. But if we do go lower, we're going to be colliding with this moving average and this horizontal resistance, potential support. So it was resistance. I remember there was a consolidation support a little bit when I zoomed in here though, but you could see there's 2 touch points, but 1 for sure, 2, 3 touch points as resistance, so it could act as support. And that's roughly about $486 and some change. The moving average is $487 and some change, by the way, but I'm expecting if we come down, the moving average will drop down as well. So $486 and some change. And then if we go lower, because I don't think that's a massive enough drop for how much tech sector could drop to more potentially, then the next level will be about $483 and some change, give or take. If we go lower, I'll try to keep you guys posted as much as I can on X and YouTube in terms of community posts. But to the upside, we're looking at resistance based off the moving average, and you can see a little bit of consolidation price points right about there, about 495 and some change. And the next level would be about 498 and some change. And then naturally that 500 too. That 500 took some time to break a little bit. So $500 price point will be the next resistance level. And then you can see the 503 and some change, constant consolidation right about there across. And then the all-time high was 503 and some change as well. Now for the Dow Jones, I know I stated that I don't want to really rely on MACD lines, but the S&P and Nasdaq did show more of a downside based off MACD lines. MACD lines, in case you're new, indicates if it's a bearish or bullish movement. So they're showing more of a bearish movement, but I think it could be just the nature of today's pull that happened to the downside. But the Dow Jones, yes, still shows somewhat of a downside, but it's not as aggressive as the S&P and Nasdaq based off the MACD lines. So given that, we actually did go up to the resistance level, near the resistance level I mentioned it earlier. So what I mentioned from last time was there's resistance pretty much at the 39,900 points, and we're at 39,753 right now, but we spiked up to 39,872 points, so pretty close to that 9, and then somewhat dropped down at where we're at right now. So that level that I mentioned earlier, 39,900, is still going to be acting as a resistance. Will we go past it? Debatable. But if we do, the next level is pretty much about the 40,050 points, give or take-ish. Now, we have this upward trend resistance line dating back since 2021. Let me just zoom out because it doesn't look perfect right now, in case if you want to visualize. It's 1, 2 touch points right by here. And then this breaks down to 4, because if you go to the 3-month chart, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So technically 6 total. And then an upward trend support line dating back since 2024 of April. And we're within this channel. So if you're wondering what this upper limit would be if we were to go to it, let's say tomorrow, potentially, because the longer it takes, the higher the high will be. And then if we drop down, the higher the low will be as well. And you're looking at roughly about 40,276 points, give or take. Now, to the downside, basically in terms of support levels, we could rely on the moving average of 39,388 points, give or take, and then 39,270 points, give or take, and 39,950 points, give or take. Will we drop lower? I don't think so, personally, because there's only 30 stocks. I don't expect that much volatility. And the volatility index, strangely enough, with the massive drops, it's still relatively low. I'm kind of shocked about that personally, but volatility index is quite low still. And the movements, again, will be dictated mainly about the inflation numbers for PPI tomorrow, or PPI numbers for tomorrow. And then the tech sector, we'll see what happens for Tesla, because even in the after hours, we closed at $241, but the after hours is showing 236 right now. So there's that. But that's basically it for today's video. If you found it beneficial, consider dropping a like. It does help with the channel, so thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. And I do post these videos daily, so consider subscribing so you'll be notified when I do upload my next videos. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace.